I am a computer consultant. My main function is to install small office systems and make sure all the components work together as a unit. I am good at what I do. The hours are erratic, but the income is excellent. My name is Grady Traynor. About 5 years ago, I met a charming little office clerk while doing my job. Her name was Brenda, and I liked her as soon as I saw her. I think the reason I liked her was that she laughed at my silly jokes and seemed interested in me as a person. My social life was non-existent. Like most guys in my area, I had very little social skills, almost none. I had never really dated, and frankly, I was hesitant to even try. The work I was doing in her office took about a week, and before it was completed, I got brave enough to ask her out. It was my first real date. Needless to say, about 6 months later, we were married. She was about 6 years younger than me, but I didn't see that as a problem. We had a bit of awkward sex before we got married. I was somewhat relieved that she had some experience because I had nothing to bring to the party. She had short dark hair and brown eyes. I liked her breasts because they were perfectly round and didn't sag one bit. Brenda wasn't thin, she had a well-defined waist and nice rounded hips. Our sex life continued to improve over the next few years. She wasn't shy about telling me what she liked, and I was a diligent student. Unfortunately, I guess I wasn't such a good husband. Between my fieldwork and the baggage I brought home every night, I lacked romance. She never said anything, but I felt I was falling behind on my marital duties. I usually wasted some time and tried to catch up, but sometimes I stumbled. Okay, I admit it was my fault. I wasn't as good a companion as I should have been. I should have entertained her more. I should have pampered her and brought her little gifts to show her how much I loved her. I did love her, but unfortunately I lacked the charm and social skills that all pretty boys had. I figured I couldn't pay enough attention to prevent problems, so I would just have to fix them ex post facto. Brenda would fall into one of her gloomy moods and then suddenly become cheerful and full of life. I realized that I hadn't done anything to cheer her up, so it must have been something else. I love puzzles of any kind. For me, this was a puzzle that needed to be solved. Fortunately, my work situation gave me a lot of flexibility. The first time, I just followed her for a few days. Brenda didn't drive, and all the places she went were within walking distance. That was the nice thing about living downtown. On the third day, she took a basket and went to the open market. She bought a few things and then turned down a side street. I walked back about half a block and watched her walk toward the third house on the left. It was a small 2-story house. She didn't knock, just walked in. I waited for about 15 minutes and then said to myself, "What the hell?" The door was unlocked and I went right in. Her basket was standing by the door. There was some noise upstairs, so naturally I went upstairs. Brenda was naked, riding a young guy with blonde hair and embossed abdominal muscles. I stood in the doorway for a long time and watched. She was bouncing up and down like crazy and looked like she was having a good time. He was just lying there, but his stomach was clenched. He had abs, just like in the Bowflex commercials. I was really upset because my wife was cheating on me, but I didn't get turned on. They just kept doing the same thing, and it was getting a little boring, so I went downstairs. I probably could have watched longer, but there didn't seem to be any point. While they were finishing up in the bedroom, I carefully wiped my fingerprints off the stair railing and the doorknob. I went to the kitchen and found a pair of rubber gloves and a good carving knife. I waited in the hallway. After about half an hour, Brenda came downstairs, got her basket, and left. I went upstairs to thank the guy for taking care of my wife. The next morning at breakfast, I couldn't stand it. "Oh, that's interesting, Brenda. A guy was stabbed to death in his bedroom on Court Street yesterday. I think we'd better start keeping the doors locked. The police don't know who did it, but they're looking for a dark-haired girl who visited him regularly. They've got fingerprints, but nothing to match." "Whoa, what was his name? Did we know him?" "Yeah. I don't know anyone who lives on Court Street, but his name was Rich Mitchell. Do you know him?" She hesitated for a few moments. "No, I don't know him. I don't know anyone who lives on Court Street either." "Well, I gotta go." I kissed her lightly on the cheek, heading for the door. I stopped for a moment and looked back. She reached out and grabbed the paper and started reading, very carefully. I chuckled to myself as I left for work. For about 5 months, things were good at the Traynor house. I tried to make Brenda happy, but she never showed as much enthusiasm in the bedroom as she did with Rich. My feelings were hurt. I could give her anything in the world, but I just didn't have what it took to turn her on. Then the cheerful glow reappeared. About a week later, I was reading the paper at breakfast. "Oh my God, Brenda! Here's another guy who was killed nearby yesterday. He was working under his car behind Chestnut Street and the jack slipped. The car fell on his chest and crushed him. You didn't know Simon Phillips, did you?" "Who?" "Simon Phillips. It says here he worked at Burke's Chemical." Brenda seemed to stammer a little. Finally, she answered, "No, I don't know anyone by the last name of Phillips at all." She set her coffee down and walked into the living room. I headed for the door and she sat there. "Are you okay, Brenda?" "Yeah, I'm fine. Just trying to figure out what I'm going to do tonight. What did you want for dinner tonight?" "How about chili?" I could tell she was upset, but she didn't know what to do. For about 6 months, everything went back to normal. I wasn't getting the crazy, passionate love I knew she could give me. I had come to terms with the fact that I was just a meal ticket and a roof over my head. I knew now that there would never be anything more than that in our relationship. There was another revelation at breakfast. "Brenda, did you see this in the paper? The guy got drunk at the Black Angus bar. You know, the one by the Maiden Creek Canal. Looks like he fell into the canal and hit his head on something. They found him floating in the water yesterday morning. His name was Jacob Kraft. There must be a bunch of guys around here who have had some bad luck, don't you think?" My wife gave me a very strange look. It was a mixture of fear and awe. She sat perfectly still, barely breathing. It was like she was afraid to even move. I didn't know anyone named Jacob Kraft, honestly. For some reason, she was terrified. It took her a while to put 2 and 2 together. I had no idea what she was going to do next. "I have to go to work, honey. You have a great day." She sat as if paralyzed as I walked out the door. The next 4 years were better. She turned into a Stepford wife. Unfortunately, the sex was mediocre. She did everything I asked her to do and seemed deathly afraid to deny me anything. There was rarely any fighting in our house at all. Meanwhile, I was raking in money and hiding it in unusual places. She knew nothing about our finances. The only thing she did was sign a blank tax form every year. She decided to get a job, and I supported that decision. Brenda ended up working for one of the local insurance companies. From what she said, the job consisted of moving paper from one basket to another. Some other functions were performed, but I wasn't interested in that, so I don't even remember what it was. For the first few weeks, it seemed like everything was fine. She was very excited about bringing home her first paycheck from her new job. She seemed a little disappointed when I told her it all belonged to her and she could spend it as she saw fit. She wanted to feel like she was contributing in some way. That feeling quickly went away when she got home from her first shopping trip. It turned out that the rose had lost its color after about 6 weeks. "What happened, Brenda? How did this great job turn to crap?" "It's my boss, Victor. Nothing I do is good enough for him. I'm just as good, if not better, than most of the other girls, but all he does is berate me. I hate to see him coming. I hate him." "Things like this happen at a new job. Hang in there a little longer and see how it goes." That got her a frown and a disapproving grunt. Well, that didn't make it any better. It seemed that Victor had singled her out for some reason. According to her, the harder she tried, the more reasons she found to criticize him. I noticed that her anger at him had changed somewhat. She was still upset about her predicament, but she was also spending a lot of time in deep thought. This was unusual for Brenda. She could sit for hours without saying anything. She was sad or depressed, just thinking. I sensed that a new game was being played, and I became interested. Overnight, there was a change. Brenda no longer complained about Victor. She didn't talk about him at all. Conversations about her work became more general. The only time we talked about her job, she asked me if I could work a little overtime. I found that very interesting, so I quickly agreed. A few weeks later, not only was Brenda not complaining, she seemed to be enjoying her job. She would come home from work late, but in a good mood. It was time to sort things out. Victor Morrison was an ordinary middle-aged guy. He wore bifocal glasses and had a bald spot. He wasn't too tall and seemed a little overweight. From what I could tell, Victor was a nice guy, not the ogre Brenda had portrayed him to be. Almost all of the staff seemed to like him. It didn't take long to realize that Brenda and Victor were the only ones working overtime, and they didn't have much work to do. All the previous guys Brenda had dated had been handsome muffin studs. Victor didn't fit that model. I smiled, thinking of my wife's audacity. Brenda was trying to figure out how to fix a problem she had encountered at work. She remembered what happened to the guys she slept with behind my back. She stopped doing it, but realized it would be a good way to get rid of Victor and make her life easier. If she had an affair with Victor, she knew I would find out and Victor would be a corpse. My smart little wife was wagging the dog. I was so proud of her. Now that I knew what was going on, I had to plan countermeasures. The only thing I knew for sure was that nothing would happen to Victor. I felt like a scorpion being carried across the river by a frog. I knew I was going to have to do something, and I hoped I wouldn't drown in the end. I decided to let things percolate for a while. A few weeks later, I came home and found Brenda sitting in the living room crying. "Okay, Brenda, what's going on? Why are the waterworks leaking?" "Oh, Grady, I screwed up. I screwed up really badly, and I'm afraid of what might happen. Please don't be mad at me, Grady. You have to help me." "Slow down. Take your time and tell me exactly what's bothering you." I handed her some tissues, and she calmed down a bit. Finally, she started talking, slowly and quietly. "When I started working, I hated my boss, Victor. I hated him so much I wanted him dead. I remember what happened to the guys I had sex with after we got married. I decided it would be best if I didn't have sex with other guys anymore because I didn't want to make you angry. That was fine until I got a new job. Am I thinking right, Grady?" "Sort of. Keep going, sweetie." "Well, I thought if I started having sex with Victor, he'd disappear too, and my problem would be solved. But nothing happened. You didn't do anything. I was worried that you didn't love me anymore. I was sure you knew, and every day I expected you to save me, but nothing ever happened." "I'm sorry, Brenda. What do you want me to do?" She's crying again. "This is a big problem, Grady. I don't want you to do anything right now. I think I've fallen in love with Victor. It's amazing how things work out. Turns out Victor felt the same way about Brenda. They both had a terrible dilemma about what to do with me. I was ready to move on. Brenda had been fun for a while, but I never considered her my lifelong companion. I was still looking for a woman like that. She was thrilled when I told her that we could get a divorce with no problem, and she and Victor could be together. I was impressed with the plan she came up with and happy that I was able to bring it to a satisfactory conclusion. Tomorrow I leave for Dublin. I have a 3-year project ahead of me, and I look forward to finding a replacement for Brenda there. Guess what? As soon as Lionel walked through the door, Emma jumped into his arms. "Did you win?" "Yes, Saleswoman of the Year. More accurately, joint winner, Melanie got as many sales as me, so we shared the celebration." "Wow, congratulations, my good girl. When are you coming?" "Thanks, honey. We're going the first week of October after the summer rush." Over dinner, she opened a bottle of champagne and told Lionel all about it. This year, there were 5 top 5. The other 3 were men. But this year, the ladies dominated sales. Traditionally, their company added a sliding scale bonus to their September salary. 5,000 to the first, up to £1,000 to the 5th, plus 4 days in a spa hotel for the top performer. Last year, Emma won £1,000, but this year, due to the unequal situation, some adjustment has been made. Emma and Melanie will each receive £4,500, but 3 days accommodation instead of 4. The hotel is in Brighton. There are mud baths, facials, massages, makeup lessons. You name it, she said. "Not much fun if the guy wins," Lionel said. "Oh, it is. There's also a gym, swimming, and snooker. Did you know Sussex has lots of vineyards and breweries? There are optional wine and beer tasting tours. We don't have to pay for anything except drinks in the bar. Mel and I have been given private rooms and Friday off. We leave on Thursday night. The train is paid for, of course." "You deserve it, Mrs. Phillips. You've worked hard for this." "Thank you. I know I haven't had much time for you, but sales are quieter for the rest of the year, and I thought we could go away somewhere for Christmas and New Year. I'll be entertaining at a spa hotel so you can choose the place. My treat. Our budget is about £4,500. "Deal, Em. I like Costa Rica." "Good choice. Just so you know, I'll call you when we get to Brighton, but after that we won't be in touch much. We won't be in our rooms most of the time, and we won't be able to take our cell phones to saunas, massages, and so on." On Saturday, Emma and Melanie went shopping for the trip, foregoing their usual night out. Lionel knew that meant they were going to have a day out and decided to have a pub lunch. He contemplated calling Steve, Melanie's husband, as he would be on the same boat. He was a nice enough guy, and the four of them had already socialized a few times, but he was a bit boring and probably wouldn't have come anyway. Lionel thought he was shy, since he never attended their wives' corporate parties. When she got home, she was still horny and even a little drunk. Immediately after arriving, she rushed to the bathroom to pee, then went downstairs and showed Lionel her purchases. He was a little surprised by the tight bikini. "But I'll need it for swimming, sauna, and so on. I chose the pink one because you like me in pink. I'll wear it again during our vacation in Costa Rica." Fair enough. And the cocktail dress? "The hotel has live music on Saturdays. I think they do it so the guests don't go out for the night. Mel and I could dance. Don't worry, we'll look out for each other, and then we can wear the dresses again at the next corporate party. No one will see them." "Makes sense," he agreed. "I hope we still have some vacation money left." She slapped his arm. "Oh, of course there is. It was on sale." Later, she dozed off in front of the TV. Lionel left the room when his phone rang, not wanting to wake her. It was Steve. Another surprise. "Hi, Lionel, it's Steve McCartney. My Mel came home drunk and went to bed early. How are you?" "Hi, Steve. Similar. Emma dozed off on the sofa. I think they must have gotten really drunk at the wine bar." "Okay. Do you want to have a pint of beer at the Carpenter's Arms? Walk over there and have a couple? I'll drive over and have just one." "Sure, why not? But I get the feeling you've got some plans." "I do. We need to talk." "So what is it, Steve?" "When the girls went shopping, I guessed that Mel didn't want to cook dinner tonight, so I decided to get some lunchtime refreshment. I went into town to try one of those famous steaks at the Red Lion." "Damn," thought Lionel. What a pity I didn't call him now. "So, how was it?" "Fantastic. Now I see why everyone's raving about them." "You should have called me." "Sorry. Anyway, I was waiting for my order when I overheard the guys at the next table talking. It sounded interesting to me, so I filmed them and wrote down what they were saying." "And they didn't mind?" "They didn't get it. I kept running my thumb over the screen, so they thought I was reading something." "Well, I think it's sour grapes because you only came third. You can't win every year. Be thankful you got 3,000. "That's not the point at all. With 3,000, my landlady and I will have a great Christmas vacation. I'm mad because I think they got their panties down for some of these sales. Almost all of our customers are middle-aged men. How can I compete if I don't have breasts or stockings?" "That's just a rumor. All successful women have similar gossip about them. Anyway, they won't even get the full prize, sharing a room and only for 3 days. No, they're still entitled to a suite each. They'll take their husbands." "Are you sure?" "Yeah. I have a buddy in accounting. The company knocked 1 day's stay out of the prize and will still pay for 2 couples. Last year, I took my Sandy. She had a better time than I did. Of course, those two probably won't take their husbands. They'll have their best customers for 3 days. "Oh, stop moaning. You're just a loser." "What do you think?" Steve asked. "Any chance they recognize you?" "No. I don't go to their events, so I've never seen any of them before." "Well, obviously they're talking about our girls," said Lionel. "At first I took the offer of sex for sale as a pinch of salt, but if this prize is really for 4, that changes everything." "That's what I thought. We need to figure out who's going with them." "There's no way they're giving us a surprise. Maybe they're picking us up?" "Doubtful," said Steve. "It's less than 2 weeks away. We'll have to take time off work. Maybe it's a couple of their clients. What do you think?" "I don't think so," Lionel said. "Getting a sale by having sex with a guy is one thing, but getting it on the basis of a promise? Neither of them could be sure they'd win until last week." "Good point. Maybe a couple of the guys they work with?" "Looks like it." "What do we do next?" Steve asked. "I know a guy who works in their accounting department," said Lionel. "I did him a favor at their last party. Got him home in a cab, safe and sound, so he owes me. Maybe he can find out more about this trip. At least he can confirm that it's really for 4 people." "Tell you what," Steve said. "I'll try to get information from the Brighton Hotel. I have one of their brochures. Let's meet here on Wednesday." The following Wednesday, they combined their details. The company of girls confirmed that the prize was indeed for 2 couples. and both winners had taken their husbands with them. Further digging revealed that in the last week, 2 more staff had booked a day off on the same Friday. One was John Clarkson, single, and in his 22 years, the youngest member of the sales team. Steve vaguely remembered Mel saying she felt sorry for the new guy and helping him out. The second was Craig Scott, a married, middle-aged purchasing manager. The hotel was equally gracious. 2 prepaid rooms had been reserved, Emma and Craig Phillips and Melanie and John McCartney. They were assigned adjoining suites, 404 and 406. The company credit card had already been entered into the hotel's system to cover entertainment and excursions, so the ladies just had to identify themselves by showing their passport or driver's license. The husbands would need no ID. At Steve's house, he discovered that Mel had bought a tight black bikini and some very sexy lingerie. Lionel preferred not to mention that Emma had a lot of stockings and see-through panties. There were so many that he wouldn't have been able to determine exactly what she had taken unless he had searched her suitcase after she had packed. But a closer look revealed that she had opened and sealed the packaging of a new bikini. He couldn't see the condoms she had hidden in the pink material, but he could feel them. "So," Lionel said, "your Mel is planning to sleep with a young stud and my Emma is going to sleep with an older married man. And there's a good chance it won't be the first time. I can't say I envy either of us. Have you thought about what you're going to do?" "All I've done is think about it. Confront Mel now and keep her away? But as you say, she's almost certainly already taken this John under her wing and put him to bed. I could steal her passport and driver's license to mess up her registration, or I could run into her at the hotel and give this guy a good beating. I'm not sure. The problem is, I love her." "And I'm sure," Lionel said. "I want a divorce. I plan to go away and live with my father." "Really?" "Yes. I know it sounds like I'm a wimp, but it makes sense." "Go on." "My father owns a successful machine shop, and I've always planned to inherit it one day. He's getting a bit old now, and my mother died last year. It would be great to get out of the rat race and reunite with him in his golden years. To be honest, the business is running itself, but I already have a few ideas on how to revamp it, so I might just drop everything and move to Lancashire and leave Emma there." "But in a divorce, you'll probably end up on the losing side. Wouldn't it be better if you had proof?" Steve said. "The courts won't pay much attention to adultery." "No, but the threat of exposing this married guy might also convince her to let you have almost everything." "Good point, but I don't want to resort to a private investigator. Maybe the hotel records and the guy's vacation details will suffice." "What do you say?" Lionel asked. "Personally, I'd prefer photographs," replied Steve, "no matter what I do afterward, even if it's just shots of them flirting by the pool." "I have a thought," Lionel said. "Do you still have that techie buddy of yours? Do you think he could clone a hotel room card or show you how it's done?" And after several failed attempts, the plan was ready. The following Saturday night, Emma and Melanie went to their usual hen party. Steve stopped by Lionel's and explained how to copy hotel key rings. He bought 2 blanks. They both took Thursday and Friday off, a cup of coffee, and they parted ways. Thursday came, and the husbands set off for Brighton in separate cars. After the first agreed events, their plans usually diverged, so they might want to leave at different times. They arrived around 11 in the morning and approached the front desk. They were wearing gray sweaters and jeans with no pattern and sunglasses. "Any chance rooms 404 and 406 are ready yet?" Lionel asked, showing Emma and Melanie's passports. "Only our wives came into town and left us with our suitcases." "No problem, Mr. Phillips. Or are you Mr. McCartney? Both rooms are ready." "I'm Craig Phillips," Lionel said and nodded toward Steve. "And he's John McCartney." She handed them the keys. "Thanks. We'll take them back right away, and then we'll find the bar." They went upstairs and checked to make sure the key cards worked. Then Steve cloned them. He took an RFID reader with him and copied them onto 2 blanks, making sure they worked too. They slipped one of the bags into the other, empty one, and went back downstairs. Steve carried it past the front desk, and Lionel handed the keys back. They stashed them behind the bar, telling the bartender their room wasn't ready yet, and had a beer. An hour later, the girl at reception left for lunch. So now, sunglasses off, they checked into 201, the double room they had previously booked for themselves. "What time did you say they would arrive?" "About 8:30 in the evening," Steve replied. "They had about an hour to wait for the Brighton train, so Mel said they'd have lunch at the station." "Well, if you insist on using that movie camera, let's break it down." They checked in and went to their rooms. Then what? If they've eaten, they'll almost certainly go to the bar. Or sleep together first, christening the hotel bed. "Right," Lionel said. "We'll go out to dinner and be back by 8. I'll make myself comfortable in the lobby and wait for them. With a baseball cap and a magazine, they won't recognize me, and I'll make sure they all check in without incident. If the same girl is still on duty, I won't trust her to say, 'These aren't your husbands,' or 'Why driver's licenses?' You used to use passports, but it's better to be safe." "Right. Then when they go to the elevators, I'll call you and you'll slip up to the 4th floor and watch their rooms from the stairwell. If they're going for a drink, they'll be out in 5 minutes. If it's more than 10 minutes, then they're having fun. Then it's up to you to decide if you want to catch them." Checking in the foursome went smoothly, and Lionel texted Steve to take a seat. He was startled when his phone suddenly rang. It was Emma, huddled behind his magazine. He quietly answered. She hadn't noticed him in the lobby, but it was strange to hear her voice from 2 different sources. He hoped she couldn't hear the echo. "Mel and I just checked in, dear." "Glad you arrived safely," he replied. "Your voice is very quiet." "Oh, I'm in the garden. That gray squirrel is back. He says he misses you already." "Oh, I miss him too. Tell him I'll be back Sunday night." When they hung up, Lionel took a picture of them getting into the elevator, then risked a quick call to Steve. "They're in the elevator." Emma said to Mel, "I'll see you at the bar." And Mel said, "Give us half an hour. So it looks like we're both in the right place." Upstairs, Steve watched them pass by and head for their doors. He managed to get a quick video of each couple entering the house. He waited 5 minutes for Emma and Craig to reappear and enter the elevator, then walked to Mel's door. 404 quietly opened and he slipped inside. Peeking around the corner of the bathroom, he saw his wife having fun with her young stud, who looked to be about 19 or 20 years old and certainly had good muscles. There was only one bedside lamp burning in the room, but it was the one closest to Steve. It illuminated Mel's face perfectly, and she was easily recognizable. She moaned and pulled John's face to hers. A quick zoom, and Steve pulled back. The noise of their cheating overrode his withdrawal. Lionel was waiting for him in 201, and they went over the evidence. "Send me a clip on my phone of Emma and her boyfriend going to their room," he said. "I'll meet her tomorrow morning, and then we can go home. Now we have everything we need." The next morning, they officially checked out of the hotel and returned to their room, promising to vacate it by noon. Around 9:30, Emma and Craig appeared under their window, by the pool, and settled down on lounge chairs. "That's my cue," Lionel said. "I'll be ready to leave in about an hour. What are you planning?" "I don't know yet. Go do your thing. Call me if I'm not around." Lionel reached the 406 and stepped inside. The first thing he noticed was the 2 cell phones. Of course, it was understandable. Emma's bikini was so small she had nowhere to put it, and they both had good reasons to be out of touch with people. Craig was obviously very tidy. His expensive leather briefcase was empty, and his clothes were neatly stacked in drawers and hanging in his closet. Lionel gathered all of his belongings and repacked them, making sure to put Craig's wallet and keys, as well as both phones. Normally, Emma's clothes were scattered everywhere. He put them in her suitcase, including all the detergents and cosmetics from the bathroom, as well as her purse and keys. There were no more of her condoms hidden in the bedside table. He studied them for a while and decided to leave them there. The room was just as it had been last night when they arrived. He got out and headed to the parking lot where he put Emma's suitcase in the trunk of his car. He held onto Craig's suitcase and led him towards the hotel. They were lying on the lounge chairs, and Lionel, placing the leather bag by the edge of the pool, pulled a chair over to them and sat down next to them. "Mr. and Mrs. Craig Phillips?" Their reaction was interesting. Craig looked up and said, "Yes?" Emma almost fell off her chaise lounge chair, shrieking, "Lionel! Shh! I need you both to listen. I'm only going to say this once." Emma started to get up, asking, "What the—" Lionel got up too and pushed her down. "I said be quiet and listen." She abruptly sat back down. Craig flinched, but he had the sense to keep quiet. "I have the details of Craig's vacation request and his address," Lionel said. It wasn't true, but he needed to get their attention. "A copy of your hotel check-in," he continued. "A photograph of you checking in together, getting on the elevator and entering room 406 is more than enough for me to file for divorce. And rest assured I will. When I get home, I'll leave details of what I want out of the divorce and put it on the dining room table. I'll call my lawyer shortly and leave you his number." He looked at Craig. "And you, Mr. Phillips, had better familiarize yourself with the terms of my wife's divorce. It would be in your best interest to convince that saleswoman to agree to them. Because if I don't get exactly what I want, that same evidence will be turned over to your wife. I don't have all the information yet about how your company feels about employees, especially those married to other people, having sex in spa hotels. But my guess is that they would take a very negative view of it, especially since they are funding it." Lionel stood up and his shadow fell over them. "I'm leaving. I'm sure the rest of your stay here will be memorable. Shut your mouths, you look like goldfish." He turned away, knocking Craig's suitcase into the pool. "Oops." Back in the room, Steve was nowhere to be seen, but Lionel noticed that he had put his things away and his suitcase was gone. He was probably waiting somewhere downstairs, probably in the parking lot. He picked up his bag and went downstairs. There was no sign of Steve in the parking lot, although his car was still parked there. Lionel went back to the lobby and made himself comfortable. Give it a few more minutes. While he waited, he saw Emma and a wet Craig wrapped in towels being led to the elevator. One of the staff was carrying a very wet leather bag. Lionel had a vague idea how this was going to turn out. Emma was about to find out that she had nothing but a tiny pink bikini in Brighton. Craig had managed to dry most of his things, but it was unlikely that their phones would work again. He decided he and Steve had better leave in case their lovers came after them. He could call his lawyer from the car, but called Steve right away. "Buddy, where are you?" "I'm still at the hotel." "I know that. I'm sitting next to your car. Are you ready to go yet?" "No, you'd better go without me. You're out of breath. Where are you?" There was a long pause, and Lionel thought he heard faint voices in the background. "I'm in Mel's room." "My God, you haven't hurt anyone, have you?" "No," Steve replied. "I've talked to Mel, and I'm not going to get a divorce." "Fair enough, but we've already checked out." "I know. I'm staying here until Sunday." "What's going on, buddy?" "Look, the movie about them sleeping together really turned me on. Thing is, I'm going to get some more. John's just about to fuck her again, and I'm joining in." Lionel grinned all the way home. Subsequently, his divorce went smoothly, the house was sold, and he moved in with his father as he had planned. John moved in with Mel and Steve, and all three seemed to be having a lot of fun. But the main event happened 6 months later when a heavily pregnant Emma married the recently divorced Craig. Perhaps Lionel should have left the condoms alone. It didn't matter. Blake Masters wondered if there could be anything worse than waking up on an unfamiliar couch in an unfamiliar apartment with a splitting headache and a churning stomach. Through bloodshot eyes, he saw his wife of 5 years and his neighbor's neighbor coming down the hallway of the neighbor's apartment. She in the same clothes as last night, but with disheveled hair and no makeup, he in boxer briefs that showed he was much better endowed than usual. They were both smiling radiantly. Yes, he thought to himself, there's something that could be worse. Elaine Masters' smile was replaced by a frown when she saw her husband looking at her with his eyes closed. She hoped he was still asleep when she and Darryl Stevens had sex for the 3rd time last night. She knew she was going to tell her husband about her adventures, but would rather do it in private after they got back to their apartment than in Darryl's apartment as he stands there smirking. "What the hell, Laney?" he shouted. How could you do this to me? The tension proved too much for Blake. He rolled over onto his back and spilled the contents of his stomach onto the carpet in front of the couch. Both Laney and Daryl recoiled in disgust. "Damn, man, that's not cool," Daryl growled. "Like what you two did was wrong." Blake gritted his teeth. Daryl at least had the nobility to adopt a contrite look for a split second. "Come on, you whore. He can clean up in here while we clean up after you," Blake said and staggered toward the apartment door. Laney's first reaction was to help Daryl clean up the mess her husband had made, but Blake calling her a whore had her on her heels, so to speak. Since her husband of 5 years had never spoken to her like that before, she decided discretion was the better part of valor and headed for the door following him. "Laney," began Daryl, but stopped when the woman raised her hand to give him a visual stop sign. Laney waited silently as Blake fiddled with the key in the lock of the apartment directly across the hall from Daryl's apartment. When he finally managed to open the door, he staggered inside, followed by Laney. Collapsing onto his couch, Blake assumed a half-sitting, half-lying position. His eyes seemed sunken and hunted. "What can you say that I want to hear, Laney?" Blake wheezed. "You got what you wanted, even though you kept telling me you didn't want it. Was it everything you hoped for?" In the few seconds she'd spent in Daryl's apartment and the one she shared with her husband, Laney had gone over several options in her head. She didn't see a single option that worked, except for the unexpected element of truth. "It was absolutely the best night of sex I've ever had in my life," she said calmly, not showing the slightest sign of fear or concern. "While you slept passed out like a drunken monkey. I hope you're proud of yourself." Blake blushed at such an accusation. He'd never passed out from drinking before. Thinking back to that night, he remembered he'd only had 4 mixed drinks at the party before waking up on Daryl's couch that morning. "What did that bastard give me last night? I only had 4 drinks," began Blake's reply. "Yeah, right," his wife replied, though she had to admit that she had never seen her husband as out of sorts as he seemed last night. "Nevertheless, are you saying it's okay to cheat on me if I'm drunk?" "When you embarrass yourself and me," said Laney, purposely not finishing the sentence. Blake staggered into the kitchen, took a handful of aspirin and a bottle of water. Then he staggered to the shower. As the fog cleared in Blake's brain, he remembered the past few months. He knew it was only a matter of time before his wife betrayed him. She had practically told him so the first time she saw Daryl. Blake and Laney had moved into the luxury apartment complex 7 months ago when their careers had begun to flourish. Several neighbors, including the neighbor across the hall, didn't fail to welcome them. Daryl was outgoing and friendly, a good-looking man who apparently spent a lot of time at the gym. Blake noticed that the neighbor seemed to spend more time with his wife than he did, which was not uncommon since Laney was a beautiful blonde with large breasts and a stunning body. Blake was a good-looking man, but he knew his wife was at least a 9 on a scale of 10. Men regularly hit on her, sometimes even in front of him. But until Daryl Hoff came along, his wife had seemed immune to their charms. He watched Laney try to behave with Daryl, but she failed miserably. He kept catching her furtively glancing at the man and blushing, but what really gave her away, in Blake's opinion, was her denial of attraction. When Blake had noted in casual conversation with her that Daryl was a handsome man, she blushed thickly, took a deep breath, and then uttered, I guess so." Never before had his wife been evasive. Open communication was the hallmark of their relationship. No topic went unaddressed, even if they disagreed. Neither of them was afraid of a well-crafted argument. Laney's refusal to engage in an argument spoke volumes. Things had gotten worse when the pair had first confronted Daryl at the complex's pool over the summer. It turned out there was a large snake tucked into his shorts, and Blake saw that his wife had definitely noticed it. Blake wasn't about to sit back and watch his wife slowly be seduced by a neighbor. Several times over the next few weeks, he subtly made it clear to both parties that he would not tolerate Daryl's interference in his marriage. "Did I ever let you know I'd cheat on you, baby?" said Lainey after he reminded her once again that he wouldn't tolerate her breaking their vows. "Don't turn into a paranoid idiot." For the next few weeks, Blake watched his wife closely. He wasn't happy when she told him about Daryl's upcoming party in 2 weeks, but felt he couldn't justify her absence. Several other neighbors would be there, as well as people from Daryl's work. Blake and Lainey walked through the lobby about 5 minutes after the party started. They chatted with a few neighbors and met a few of Daryl's co-workers. After drinking their second margarita of the evening, they went off in different directions to socialize on their own, which they often did at parties. Only this time, Blake made sure to keep his wife in sight most of the time. He found it odd that she was avoiding her host. Blake didn't hesitate to take a third margarita straight from Daryl. He hadn't noticed how drunk he started to feel after taking the drink. He remembered drinking another margarita a while later, but he didn't remember anything else until he woke up on Daryl's couch. Daryl made sure Lainey noticed her intoxicated husband staggering around the apartment and slurring his words as he chatted with the other partygoers. "You never told me he was so giddy," he grinned, as Lainey looked at her husband and frowned. When the party was finally over, Lainey and Daryl gathered up everything that had been piled up and covered the blanket over Blake, who was lying down. "It's karma, Lainey. He deserves what he gets, and you deserve to get some of it," Daryl said. She took one more look at her husband and then followed Daryl into his bedroom. She had been waiting for this day for almost 6 months. Daryl smiled radiantly and began undressing the woman. His smile grew even wider as more and more of her clothes were removed. She was the goddess he had envisioned her to be. After a while, Daryl was asleep. Lainey got out of bed, walked down the hall, and checked to see if her husband was sound asleep. She looked at her prostrate husband, grinned widely, and walked back into Daryl's room, snuggled against his back. Sunlight streamed into the bedroom. Waking up, she thrust her hips up, wrapping her arms around her lover and kissing him passionately. "Good morning, lover," she whispered. "Did you sleep well?" "Oh, yes. How about we celebrate the morning before we wake up your loser husband?" he said. Lainey frowned. Despite what she was doing at the moment, she still loved her husband and didn't feel comfortable with Daryl's verbal humiliation. "The least you could do is remember whose wife I am and try to show him some respect," she said. "Yeah, okay," he replied quietly. It was several minutes before they heard Blake stirring in the living room. Lainey was sitting at the kitchen table drinking coffee when Blake entered the room. He poured himself a cup of coffee and took his usual seat at the table. "You need to take a shower," he said in a muffled voice. "After we talk," she replied. "Don't tell me it didn't mean anything, it was just sex," Blake growled. "Fair enough, because it wasn't just sex. I'm not going to lie to you, it was the best sex of my life," she declared. "You already said that, so I guess I'll believe you," he said. "Then you know I'll want to do it again," she said. "I think that if you really love me, you'll want to give me that experience again." Is that what he told you to ask? Or is that your own original thought? Either way, I won't share you with him. I've had you for 5 years, so I guess it's his turn for the next 5 years. "Wait, what?" she replied, looking confused. "You're going to give me to him? I'm not some property you can just give away." "But you're also not property I own," he interrupted. "Obviously, I can't stop you from sleeping with him again in the future, so why even try? You could come to him and be his girlfriend, sex buddy, whatever. There's no separation. You can be his completely." She wrinkled her nose, indicating she was trying to think through the problem. "What if I don't want to be his? I'm already yours," she said. "You were mine, baby. I knew this day would come." "How could you have known that? I didn't even realize it," she argued. "Apparently I know you better than you know yourself. Have you ever thought about it?" said Blake. Until a few months ago, Blake had thought he'd married the perfect woman. beautiful, with a swimsuit model's body, brains, and character. She could be a bit of a smartass, which he thought was a very nice quality, and was independent enough that she didn't feel like she needed to always be in a guy's arms. Blake and his roommate were at a party at the Midwestern college town where they were juniors when Lainey and her two friends approached them. Blake noticed that all three women were beautiful, but since he liked redheads, he turned his attention to Lainey, who was a sophomore. Apparently, so did a lot of the other guys at the party because it took almost 2 hours before Blake finally got a chance to introduce himself. Or excuse himself, he noted to himself. Under normal circumstances, I would have offered you a drink, but my mom didn't raise no fools. I waited 2 hours to get a chance to talk to you. If I leave you alone for even a minute, I won't get another chance to talk to you tonight, Blake said. Lainey giggled and Blake fawned over her. She seemed happy to be in his company as well. For the last 2 years of school, they lived together. Blake was in pharmacy school, a 5-year program, so they graduated in the same year. The year after that, they got married. Both were not virgins when they met, but neither were players. They learned from each other as life went on, and both seemed content with what the other brought to the table. Until Lainey wasn't anymore, Blake noticed. When Lainey stepped out of the shower, Blake was nowhere to be found. She walked across the hallway and knocked on Daryl's door. He was surprised to see a woman at his door. "Wow. He let you come back?" asked Daryl. "Apparently he doesn't care. Said he could pick me up. Left when I got in the shower," Lainey said curtly. "Ah, any man who turns you down is a fucking idiot. Come on in. Lunch?" Pondering with his little brain, Daryl spent most of the day trying to convince the woman to move in with him. He'd dump his current girlfriend in a heartbeat if he could get Lainey, he thought to himself. Spurred on by Daryl, Lainey spent most of the day raging against her husband. "This is my body, and I'll give it to anyone I want, so fuck him," she yelled, strutting around Daryl's apartment. "He's letting me go! Ha! I'll go with whoever I want to go with, and he can stay home for all I care." Daryl smirked at Lainey's last statement. He knew his suggestion of Lainey's thoughts was working. What wasn't working at this point was Daryl's attempt to get Lainey back into his bed. She was thrashing around, stomping her feet and howling at her husband. Sex was the last thing on her mind at that moment. Blake spent the afternoon with a few friends at a sports bar eating wings and drinking beer. He called his favorite pizza place to order a takeout pizza and got back to the apartment around 6:30. He figured Lainey was across the hall having sex with Daryl when he didn't see her in their apartment. Lainey heard her apartment door slam shut and was outside Daryl's apartment door in a flash. "You piece of shit coward!" she shouted at him, barging into her own apartment. "Where the hell have you been?" "It's my body, and I can do whatever I want with it," he shouted back. "I've been eating wings and drinking beer with him. Now I'm going to eat pizza with him." "What the fuck?" asked Lainey, completely stunned. "Pizza? I got a big one. But not big enough for motherfucker Daryl to walk in," Blake said quietly. He looked his wife over from head to toe, noting that her makeup was evenly applied and her hair was in place, so to speak. "Did I interfere with your plans?" "I thought Mister was going to be with you," Blake said. "Not funny," Lainey snorted, pulling 2 plates out of the cupboard. The pair sat down to eat in silence. After 5 minutes, Lainey asked the question she was dreading the answer to. "So what are we going to do next, Blake?" "I'm going to stay here until my lease is up in 5 months. I assume you're going to go through the hall," Blake replied. "I don't want to go through the hall. I don't want to get a divorce. The sex was great, but you're my man, my husband," she said. "But I'm not sharing. I'm not sharing. You made that choice for both of us last night. Do you have any remorse?" asked Blake. "I made the wrong decision last night," said Lainey. "But everyone makes mistakes. Surely you can forgive one mistake. A bad decision, no doubt, but not a mistake. A mistake would be to do it once. But to do the same thing twice last night and again this morning? Come on. Don't insult my intelligence. You two set the stage. I'm pretty sure I was drugged, And then you followed your plan, Blake said. You wanted him. He wanted you. You both got what you wanted. The only one left out is me. But I'll get over it someday. Right now it's too late to worry about me. Lainey sat up and cried quietly. I don't want to leave, Blake. I want to stay here, she sobbed. Pack a bag, baby. Go back to the boy you love. That evening, Daryl smiled as he opened the door. Lainey grinned as she walked into the house with a bag in her hands. It was obvious that she had been crying hard. The look on her face made Daryl realize that there would be no repeat of last night this evening. Not only had they not had sex, but Daryl couldn't even get Lainey to share a bed with him this night. She slept on Daryl's couch, dressed in a t-shirt and tattered sweatpants. Lainey was still asleep when there was a loud knock on Daryl's door. She glanced at the clock on the wall and flinched when she saw that it was 6:24. Who could be knocking on the door this early on a Sunday morning, she thought, staggering to answer the knock. Elaine Masters? A young woman who looked like she'd barely graduated from high school asked. It took Lainey a split second to realize the girl was addressing her. She was only called by her first name at work or at her parents' house. She nodded silently to the girl as the realization came to her brain. You've been served, exclaimed the girl in a tone too cheerful for the hour, Lainey thought. Who gets served on Sunday morning? Muttered Lainey. You, replied the girl, and turning on her heel, walked away. Lainey walked over to the couch, grabbed her keys, and stomped back across the hall to her apartment. Get up, you piece of shit! She yelled, walking into the bedroom where Blake was sleeping. How the hell did you manage to file for divorce in just one day? She yelled to her husband. Remember when I said I probably know you better than you know yourself? Well, I've been preparing these papers for about a month, knowing it was only a matter of time. I called the lawyer's office yesterday, paid some OT to have them delivered today, he replied. Lainey recoiled upon hearing Blake's explanation. Was it really that obvious, she wondered? Splitting the couple's assets in half was easy enough, especially since they didn't have a house or children to worry about. As Blake had decided, Lainey moved across the hall and he stayed in the apartment until the lease was up. It took Lainey about 2 weeks to come to terms with the situation, and until that happened, Daryl couldn't get the woman back into his bed. And when she did return to his bed, according to Daryl, it still wasn't as good as the first night. A couple weeks after Blake filed the lawsuit, he got a call from his mother-in-law. He'd always gotten along well with his in-laws, so he wasn't sure what to expect. You pulled the trigger real quick, Blake. What are we missing? His mother-in-law asked. What did she tell you happened, Mom? He asked in response. She said she was wrong one day and you applied the next. Really that fast? She replied. What is this mistake she's trying not to tell me about? She's trying not to tell you about the fact that she cheated on me 3 times that night and the next morning. I thought she and the guy across the hall were getting a little too chummy, and I warned her that one slip-up would be too many. I don't think she thought I'd jump off so quickly, but she broke my heart and my trust, Blake explained. I'm so sorry, Blake. I knew you would tell me the truth, his mother-in-law said. Blake began working more at the pharmacy in an attempt to keep busy. In his free time, he spent more time at the gym, but less time with friends. A few friends, upon learning of his impending divorce, tried to stick up for him, but the once affable Blake was quickly turning into a recluse. While Daryl wasn't physically afraid of Blake, he still kept his distance from Lainey's husband, fearing that if Blake acted irrationally, he would have to defend himself and injure the smaller man. It certainly wouldn't help his relationship with Lainey, who still seemed to be holding back after filing for divorce. Blake rarely spoke to Lainey or Daryl when they saw each other in the hallway or parking lot. His wife was shocked at how quickly he gave up on her. I thought he loved me enough to fight to keep me. I'm not exactly a liver, you know, she told her mother in a phone conversation. No, you're not chopped liver, but with your behavior, you're not filet mignon either, her mother replied. Lainey sighed. Whose side are you on, Mom? You may be my daughter, but if I'm taking sides, it's Blake's. He hasn't done anything to deserve your disrespect. I thought Daddy and I raised you better than that, her mother said. Behind all these events, Lainey didn't remember that she and Blake were trying to have a baby when she started having sex with Daryl. She hadn't taken birth control pills in over 3 months. She hadn't even thought about it when she woke up 3 mornings in a row with nausea. "You're on birth control, aren't you?" asked Daryl. "Oh, God," Lainey whispered. Lainey's lawyer had tried to get the divorce delayed until after the baby was born, but Blake's lawyer had had the good sense to point out that the pregnancy had occurred after Daryl had started sleeping with the woman, which meant the baby was definitely not Blake's. Daryl lay on his back in the dark and listened to his firstborn suckle on Lainey's left breast. While he hadn't been thrilled at the thought of becoming a father when Lainey announced her pregnancy 18 months ago, the actual arrival of the baby had been much better than he had expected. He quickly fell in love with the infant. Unfortunately for Daryl, his feelings for the baby overpowered his feelings for the woman. Although he lusted after her, he certainly did not love her. The sex was good to great, but other than that, they were friends at best. Why did her ex-husband have to be such a fucking Boy Scout? Daryl would have preferred that Lainey stay married to Blake and only occasionally step out into the hallway. But Blake didn't like that idea and made her file divorce papers before that weekend was over. Lainey's thoughts at that moment weren't much different from Daryl's. She too thought that the sex with Daryl was good or great, but she would have preferred to stay with Blake as well. She loved Blake and would have loved to give him a child. But instead, karma would have Blake thinking about Lainey or Daryl at that very moment, plotting some kind of revenge. But at the moment, he was too busy to do such things while in the middle of a threesome with 2 young women. Perhaps the best revenge was a good life.